Good evening, everyone. 7:36, July 14th. Fictitious gavel, come to order. Welcome, live meeting, both Zoom and being live streamed. Thank you, a week ahead of schedule. We thought it would take a couple of weeks. I'm pointing to the gang in the back, and I think the pledge, and then we can get going with the meeting. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. It was robust.
Should have been in.
Well, we're all live. We're still adjusting. Okay. Talking to the mics. Folks will tell us what's going on. So, thank you all. We have a few people on Zoom, so very excited about that. And this is a work session, so I'm going to turn it over to see if there are any announcements. I was told none, but in the last minute, anybody? Anything exciting to report? No. Okay. Village manager. I would say welcome back, but I think a 3-day vacation doesn't, it's only 3 days.
Like I never left, so good evening, everybody. So first on our agenda, we're going to be talking with John Fry of Nexus. John has been retained, and his Nexus team have been retained to work on design plans for Rec Center as well as 16 Croton Avenue. The impetus for this was really based on making some changes to the buildings based on some longstanding issues we had involving security, but more recently, how those changes have now become even more of a necessity due to the recent pandemic, how we can make the buildings more functional. Of course, when you look at these designs, there's always, numerous things you can do to improve something, but we want to really go forward in a way that addresses some of the more immediate concerns about access to buildings. In this building, it would be elevator predominantly. However, for tonight, we will be talking about the rec center improvements, how they can be phased in over time, as and we'll be hearing from John later to talk about proposed changes for 16 Croton probably early August. So with that, I would like to turn this over to John Fry, who is with us via Zoom.
Thank you, Karen. Good evening, all. Is the screen share up?
Yes.
Yes, John.
Terrific. So as Karen shared a brief overview, we are implementing concurrent reconnaissance and design explorations for both Caputo Center and Village Town Hall 16 Croton. Tonight's presentation, while it's focusing on the community center, there are some slides at the end. If there's time, we can give you a brief overview on where we stand on 16 Croton. And I understand there are elements as of today regarding the elevator that may have shifted some priorities, but that they are concurrent priorities, although the overview tonight is focusing on the community center. So the process to date has been three primary areas. We've compiled, as you see in sort of the upper group of photographs, 3 generations of drawings that were available, both for the original community center and the incremental additions regarding the gym and the aquatic center. We have implemented numerous site visits, both as an internal Nexus team, following up, measuring information that we had via the drawings. We actually commenced internal thinking and design ideas, and we had several meetings, relatively informal meetings. We characterize them as initial programming meetings with a range of staff, and including walkthroughs with the mayor and trustee.
Recording in progress.
And we've also implemented a site visit both collectively and as on our own team. The site visit collectively was to the Children's Center. Our team visited the library on a separate day, and those walkthroughs were primarily to look at sort of the bar that's been set in the village, but also to look at implementation of good examples of resilient finishes and lean methodology, if you will, in terms of achieving fresh finishes and innovative ways of treating interiors. And both, we have excellent examples here in Ossining, both the Children's Center and the library, and I think our staff came away with lots of wows. So all of this has yielded via Revit technology, which is a next-gen AutoCAD platform, our ability to create 3D models. And 3D models are not only for visualization, but later on down the line, they also contribute to technical drawings, which are fairly detailed and also can be implemented in utilizing 3D technology. This also gives us, these are stagnant images. In the future, we will be able to zoom around the 3D models of both the community center and 16 Croton and zoom into the models as we begin to explore alternatives and incremental steps, perhaps, as a part of the master plan initiative. But we're at a very good point now that we have, we've reached a workable 3D model that will expedite the next steps. And I think they will provide a good tool for visualizing ideas for everyone. As Karen indicated, really over the process of the past month to 6 weeks, as we've gotten into the reconnaissance and we've revisited what we're learning at these facilities in more detail, the refinements and compass point setting for priorities has evolved also. And as a part of our original proposal, and I think it's been confirmed over our dialogue over the past month and a half, we're sharing as we understand them today. Obviously, building security is the primary initiative, both at the community center and at 16 Croton. They both share the same characteristics in terms of centralizing, managing, and monitoring visitor traffic. At the community center, too, we believe, and it's probably not profound, that the west parking lot lower entry probably was the master plan intention for a centralized entry as that facility began to evolve in increments over time. And I think we would all agree that we're at a milestone where we're going to realize, or about to realize, a recalibration of entering that facility to support centralized manage and monitoring visitor traffic. One of the other notions, more so at the community center, less so at 16 Croton, but still common elements regarding internal circulation. Both facilities could be enhanced modestly by simple but more evident wayfinding notions, and that is typically low-hanging fruit. One of the other internal circulation notions are updating finishes, primarily at the community center. Those will not only lend to resiliency into the future, they will also lend to acoustic enhancement and obviously visitor and user improved experience. We think, not to dwell on item B, but one of the other items that you're probably familiar with at the community center there are a lot of blind corners in that building. And thinking ahead towards notions of security, safety, and comfort, and user comfort, we'll also, beyond technology-driven notions of security, we'll explore other latent and passive notions of user experience, circulation, and traversing corridors that dead into blind corners, etc. In terms of initiative priorities regarding immediate needs beyond A and B, the most common initiative that has surfaced even before we were involved is regarding the Youth Bureau initiative, and re-envision how that can be bolstered both in existing programs and as supporting expanding programs. Clearly, there are spaces at the community center which range in terms of use patterns. Many are very latent today. The lower level area just off the west entry that's been commonly known as the recreation room has been wanting for more definition and refinement for quite some time, we feel like. And we are exploring, and we plan on sharing in more detail how to energize and better utilize that space. There are adjacent spaces that have accommodated offices over time and eventually go TV. We feel like those spaces have a future to them that supports energizing a youth bureau area. And as needs and initiatives have evolved, those spaces are easy to bring along in the evolving programmatic support of the Youth Bureau. Regarding community services, one of the primary notions from the beginning is the thinking about relocating Section 8 housing services from the rear annex at 16 Croton to perhaps a space in the current Sing Sing Museum footprint on the upper level. And we've begun, I'll share in more detail as we progress here, how we begin test fitting footprints that replicate where the space utilized at 16 Croton and what it would look like in yield if it was transcribed to the community center location. One of the unique aspects of this community center, and this is from perspective for working on numerous community centers, is there are existing entries, there are multiple existing entries which provide much flexibility. And so all of these initiatives to date and priorities appear to be easily accommodated and enhanced given the range of entry points that exist. So the need for creating new entry points is not needed here, and that is in and of itself a cost-effective circumstance. And as I shared, the underutilized space you're all familiar with. The potential for the current museum footprint is significant, and I'll share as the test fit if the Section 8 offices are moved as they are realized today at 16 Croton, there's still going to be a significant amount of space on that upper level in that museum footprint that can be utilized in a number of other programmatic ways, and we're still exploring and discussing that as a team and within the OSNI team. The community center kitchen has an interesting trajectory, and Nexus is fortunate to be at a fulcrum between the community, for the community, between the town of OSNI and the village of As you may be aware, as you're likely aware, the town has a grant to refurbish the kitchen. The grant and that initiative is primarily focused on supporting the Seniors Meals Program. As this process began to ramp up in conjunction with that, it seemed clear to everyone we were discussing this with that there was an opportunity to merge some thinking and perhaps some programmatic initiatives, and that that they would both be mutually beneficial and reinforce one to the other. I think Joe may be on tonight. At some point, we plan on visiting Joe as a refresh, to cast a new look at building code and life safety assessment for the community center, not so much 16th Road, but primarily for the community center, both as an assessment of where it is today and where what potential modifications might mean in terms of life safety, passive egress, etc. And there are some circumstances you're all familiar with that have evolved over time at the community center, which I'll highlight when we get to the photographs. And then we'd like to keep an eye, a peripheral eye, on broad set of initiatives that are underway. And the most significant being the improvements to the exterior mechanical system area on the east side of the building. We have those drawings, so we will be able to model those in the 3D model to better understand that adjacency to the courtyard, and that courtyard is I'll speak to briefly as we progress here. The notion of the existing kitchen not only supporting the Seniors Meals Program, but thinking about potential programmatic, introducing new programs like culinary teaching programs, and merging that with the town's effort in refurbishing the kitchen. We know that there are explorations for parking enhancements along Route 9 Highland Avenue, and those may have community linkage opportunities that enhance access and opportunities at the community center. The evolution of the Sing Hill Greenway, hopefully the next future westerly portion of the Greenway as it may be envisioned with the DPW site. Evolution, we also think there's a small incremental step that might have value in terms of an easterly terminal at the front door to the community center. And we want to, Nexus, as a part of our firm culture, we think in sustainable means and methods as a core design methodology. So we want to think about, and we're going to explore, and we've already started to consider cost-effective sustainability features that can be introduced. Clearly, the community center has the most opportunities, has the best palette to support a range of sustainable features. 16th Road probably is much more challenged in terms of introducing those elements there. And we want to think in the last bullet point, and I'll actually jump to the next, well, in a few slides, about other community circulation, community fabric linkages that would reinforce the community center as a hub. The process has been gauging existing building design features that some of which, as familiar as I am with the community center, I discovered over the last 6 weeks. We want to make sure that we keep suggestions, whether they're immediate priorities or long-term priorities, grounded in terms of feasibility and cost effectiveness. And I'll share it as we get into the drawings, latent features of the community center that have probably been long forgotten or never understood, and I'm certainly guilty of that also. We always want to measure all of these initiatives in terms of the achievable hierarchies and a range of methodologies to procure improvements. Clearly, the community center has had, most notably, the music room as an internal improvement, and it's a successful, small, incremental, significant, and meaningful improvement. And the ideas that were really explored in the Sing Sing Museum area that were cross-pollinated into the music room, clearly those set some compass points for thinking about other areas of the community center so that there is a cohesive aesthetic that really are relatively easy to achieve, and that there's some common design features that are implemented throughout the structure.
John, if I may interrupt, I very much am enjoying the presentation, and I know that when Deputy Mayor Quezada and I were down there, we had discussed a lot of this, so I appreciate it. Presentations given to the board are supposed to be about 10 minutes long. Would you, just so we're respectful of people, and we're supposed to get the presentations 48 hours in advance to prepare with questions, et cetera, could you sort of enlighten us as to how many more slides you have?
Yes.
Because we're heading on to 20 minutes.
I'll pick up the pace, and so the overall initiative is fairly comprehensive in terms of exploring the master plan availability for a range of priorities, and we've developed, and we'll share more detail, and we'll certainly share this presentation, the notions of community linkage, which we feel like are important in the big picture. Some of the other notions regarding the exterior spaces and the exterior opportunities that are unique to the community center and community as a community asset. We'll share a range of cost-effective notions, of design notions that can easily be implemented, some of which were evident at our Children's Center tour, and quite frankly, even at the library. And we'll begin to drill into the specific list of initiatives as they relate to specific spaces. And we certainly began to catalog those spaces here, both in plan and in section. And I could speak for hours about what we discovered in section, but I'll defer that till a later date. I think many of you or several of you are familiar with some of the overarching notions, but one of the other concurrent elements to the master plan process is spatial analysis matrices, which will catalog the spaces, grade the spaces as to their existing current state, the intensity of use, and the space potential in terms of means and methods. We have explored, we are beginning to explore and exploring concurrently all the elements set forth that we discussed at 16 Croton, primarily the elevator. I think our initial focus has been gathering reconnaissance on emerging elevator technology that is specifically targeted for existing conditions, and that technology is rapidly evolving. And I'll conclude.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, everybody's on the cell phones. Let's try this again. I'm sure that there are questions. I don't know if there are comments. People have questions for John or for staff or for anybody else regarding community center. I have a bunch, but.
Hi, John. So I'm trying to get, so are we looking at a really a complete renovation of the entire community center, or what areas are you going to focus on?
I do not anticipate, my sense is no. We are not looking at a complete renovation
Okay.
looking at setting a series of initial priorities. Clearly, the entrance, recalibrating, recasting the entrance is primary focus number one.
What would happen to the, what would happen to the upper entrance that's currently used now? Like, would you close it off, or?
And there's been recent dialogue, there's been a range of thoughts of how we can, how that space is best utilized. It's certainly, there's going to be, by relocating the elements that serve the reception area there to the lower level west entry, there's going to be found space up there too. But there's a range of alternatives for reutilizing that space, and probably, I'm guessing keeping that entrance as an incidental entrance, maybe a staff entrance. It could serve as a range of secondary entrances in the future.
Okay.
I mean, it's a work session, it's not like you can't ask again, I'm just, do you have more for now, or?
No, that was my main, I think.
Okay.
So John, with the elevator in 16 Croton Avenue, what have we found out? What have we looked at? Because it's old and it needs to be addressed. So where are we at where are you at in the process of that with the elevator?
Yeah, so what we know is, much of what we know is not profound. Most of you already know this. The staff size is the primary challenge. What we do feel like is that there is an opportunity to expand the shaft to the south. That's probably relatively low impact in terms of any elevator shaft, recalibrating any elevator shaft. Whether or not we can merge available retrofit elevator technology into a unique shaft size like that is the big hurdle. And that's where the bulk of the reconnaissance is right now. Sadly, and I know this is not going to help any of us, the ThyssenKrupp elevator technology that is best suited for this particular circumstance is widely available in Europe and most of the planet, but not in the United States yet. And so we actually have been pinging ThyssenKrupp to go, is this something is this a technology that's potentially going to be introduced here in the next 6 months, in the next year, in the next 5 years? I don't know, but certainly we can't place our chips hoping that a suitable elevator technology is going to surface.
Right.
This,
So,
we're looking at other
Right, so you have Otis, you have Schindler, there's a multiple of, right?
there are 5.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
But let's face it, that elevator is a challenge. It is a significant challenge.
I can jump in. You done?
I'm done.
Okay, cool. Thank you, John. Appreciate the presentation. Would definitely love to have that over email. I want to start with what sounds like the first and biggest priority, which are the security enhancements, and that's where the changing of the entrance comes in. Would love to hear a little bit more detail about what are the vulnerabilities that the current setup has and how this is hoping to address that.
Now, tonight,
If you could give me a few sentences on it, high level, bullet points, folksy.
I think Bill Garrison speaks most eloquently about his concerns in terms of having a sense of monitoring internal circulation. Not only having a sense of managing entrance, but understanding who, what, where, when, and why internal visitors are circulating through the facility. And that's not unique to the Center, right? Or this community center. It's a common theme in community centers and schools and virtually all public buildings now. So part of, I think in a snapshot, the biggest volume of visitors to this facility all, you utilize the lower level, whether they're, all of the spaces are the highest use spaces adjacent to that entry at the lower level. So understanding then what this tertiary circulation to the art room and to whatever the museum space may become, and how that's managed, whether it's solely reliant on technology, cameras, sensors, other technology-driven monitoring components, or other. And there, there are others too, but that's a fairly detailed discussion that we're obviously all going to participate in soon.
So you can check my understanding. I'll give you my understanding of what I heard you say, and you tell me where I'm wrong. And I see Bill here is also. You feel free to chime in, Bill. So folks are coming into the building, and it's unclear to us who these people are, what they want, where they're going, etc. And by changing the entrance to the lower level, that will help to address that, because most people are using services on the lower level, and so we'll have more of an understanding of why they're there, who they are, etc. because of that. Is that right?
Yes, and it's not, yeah, that's right.
Okay. I suppose, and perhaps this can be for another time if I'm getting too into the weeds. I'm not exactly sure how changing the entrance to the lower level helps to address that. When I've gone into the community center, sometimes I go in and there are folks at the desk and I give them my information. They ask where I'm going. They tell me how to get there, etc. Other times, let's say I'm there to vote. I come in, no one asks me, maybe I can ask for directions, but nobody generally asks me where I'm going. They just gotta let folks, because a lot of folks are coming in and out with that activity. So perhaps that will meant to address that, having more consistent security. I don't know. My main point is I'm not exactly quite understanding what the use case here is. Like, what is it that we're solving for exactly? Is it that kids are running around? Who are these kids? We have please.
Let me just, because right now, with the exception of voting, we use the space for a lot of things that we don't typically use it for. Voting probably will continue, but COVID testing, immunizations, let's hope not.
Cooling center.
During the pandemic, we basically moved the reception area to the ground floor, so the lower level rather. So right now, if you're coming in for programming, you're coming in through that entrance. The other entrance is not typically used now during the day, with the exception of voting, because that's on the upper level. Now, those are things we can consider, but what was happening prior to the pandemic, you had people coming in for swimming and programs downstairs, and you had people coming in upstairs who were maybe taking classes, and it was difficult to really have a good handle on who was where in the building. The other issue is, too, that, if you're talking about evenings or other times of day, you really don't want to have people coming in from multiple points. You have no way to know if those people leave after a certain time, so that's really is just focusing. And the way the building was designed was designed originally to have that function down there. It's not really clear to me.
Yeah, we discussed it.
Yeah,
It's not clear when it shifted.
But there already is actually a window there that never is used, and there's offices down there. So right now it's really putting it back to its original intent. What we did find during the pandemic, though, that having these other entrances was valuable too, because it gave people a way to go in and out during the pandemic. It does create a dedicated space if you want to do early voting or some other function in the upper level. So we'll probably maintain that, but it really is to isolate the day-to-day functions of going in for your rec programs through one door.
That is clear. Will the doors be locked?
The doors, the other doors will be locked from the exterior. They'll have emergency exit locks on them to get out, but they'll be locked from the exterior, yes.
That's helpful. My last question, there was a long list of different kinds of priorities. What was this business language? Peripheral initiatives that was there's a long list of extra stuff that you could do. Could you give me a sense of what are your priorities or kind of first principles, whether it be we're looking to make the space more green or more accessible, more economically viable, you know, whatever. Because how do you choose between like cost-effective sustainability features and, you know, whatever else is on that list? I'm just trying to get a sense of like how you're thinking about that.
I'll start, but then maybe if Bill wants to go in, the initial function is really to reorient the entrance to the lower level. That's the primary function. So that involves recreating where the reception window is may need to be reoriented a bit, shifting the offices, and then also looking at how we're going to treat the other entrances and the other space that remains, because we do have the Youth Bureau coming in. So right now, there is no dedicated space for the Youth Bureau office and rooms that would need. So looking at the existing space with that, and then the ancillary things that are coming up is the town of Austin runs the senior nutrition program and basically uses the kitchen down there and the senior room as in now. Those, they're both in need of upgrades, and I think we can all agree that there's need to upgrade some of the flooring and different things, painting at least in parts of the community center. But the senior nutrition program will be getting a new kitchen through a community development block grant that the town got. Now, as we look to do that, we may want to consider augmenting that as the village so that we could potentially use that space for a teaching kitchen or something else now that we're bringing youth program in and we're looking at doing, you know, career training and different things. So there are things that could be done based on what's happening now, and it's really just evaluating what we want to do now that we have those opportunities.
Thank you. I lied. Two more quick things. One, timeline. Would you have a sense of, particularly for the changing of the entrance, but for how you're thinking about the timeline more broadly?
So, John, do you want to talk a little bit about the timeline? Because the kitchen is maybe something that we would, an ancillary one that we would consider earlier, but basically the other things are things that could be, you know, designed and begin to execute this year.
Yeah, I think we're in the process of now, as we refine the priorities, right, collectively, and begin to apply, we can begin to apply timelines to each initiative, and maybe some of them are individual initiatives and some of them run concurrent.
I think you just need to remove the.
I think we have to,
Yeah, I see that.
but the next step is generally agreeing upon what the priorities are and what the opportunities, realistic opportunities to pursue can be.
So I caught the second part and I zoned out the first part. I was helping the mayor with her
Sorry.
pen. No,
Yeah,
you're good.
apparently the
No,
mayor-
it's fine. I totally missed it. So what was the first? I think you answered my question in the first part. Timeline. Can you just repeat the first part of what you said? Like the first 3 sentences.
We're in the process of once, for example, the entry, and because I feel like there's a general concurrence that the entry is priority number one.
Yeah.
Now we can apply a timeline to that, and whether that is a standalone timeline just to complete a defined entry package, or whether that's in conjunction with other work. I think that's the next decision, and then we can apply final timeline.
Got it. So we don't know, but are we looking at like 2021, 2022?
Well, I think, well, no, I mean, I look at Paul here. I mean, there are likely elements that could be achieved in 2021, but I don't feel like that is. Yeah.
He says 2. Okay, thank you. The last piece for me, other than our helpful questions, suggestions, and comments, is there anything else that would be helpful for us, the board, to give to you? Are you looking for anything else from us, or is this more of an update? Here's where we are.
Here's where we are in continued dialogue.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
We're going to have this continued dialogue, interactive dialogue, and over the next month or so.
Oh, Karen, did we land on whether there was going to be a mural outside?
So we actually, I did speak to Bradley Morrison about this, and I think we have to make sure that he's looped back with the group that's doing the mural. So one of the challenges that we have is that we do have this like sort of we're in a little bit of flux now. So originally, they wanted to put the mural on the front of the building facing Broadway. If we make changes to that, because it's possible, and we just don't know the extent of those changes, that it's likely not a good time to do that. The other space that's a natural for the mural is the brick part, which would be the exterior of the game room that's facing the parking lot. But really now, we have to think about the timing of all this. So while we very much want to support the mural project, these things are happening. And again, some of it we just hadn't anticipated when we initially spoke about the mural. The mayor had made a suggestion that the mural be done on something that would be movable so that it could be placed in a certain place, which is a really good suggestion and something we can do. So I had spoken to Bradley Morrison about that, but it was on my list of things to do this week now that I'm back to make sure that the group knows what the next steps are.
Thank you.
And we've actually test fit the size of a potential mural on our elevations that we can share, just as a diagram.
You have some?
I do. Hey, John, how are you? Manuel Quesada here. So I want to thank you for this presentation. It was a little bit helpful, and also it was nice meeting you the other day last week at the community center. As much as I do appreciate a good 3D model rendering from Revit, I wish I could have seen a little bit more of development on the inside and the functionality of the spaces and in respect to what we have asked. My recollection of this was the feasibility of what the community center has a potential to be. That was one of the things that at least I emphasize on that. So I would like to hear more about that, and obviously some of the questions that I was going to ask, my colleague Omar already asked with regards to timelines and things of that nature. So thank you. I don't have to ask those questions now. So I would like to see that, and obviously we know that there's some items that we could be doing in-house, and we have been doing a lot of that stuff already. So my hope is actually to see the programming itself with what could happen next. I'm not looking for CDs. That was not part of our request. We were looking for how does it work security-wise? What do we need to do to solve that issue? What do we need to solve the issue in regards to flex spaces? We know we have to change and do a lot of the updates. We know all those things. So I would like to see in a time frame the next steps with more concept of what next steps are.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's our next step plan.
So now, in regards to the elevator, and I know we're concentrating a lot in the community center because the other piece of this whole puzzle is the elevator here in 16 Crown Avenue. And I'm not sure if you're aware, but this morning actually the elevator was working, and then it was working, and then it's not working again. So, as much as this presentation was based on the community center, we also have an urgency here to fix this elevator situation. So I want to make sure that they both run, I want to make sure that they both run in a parallel path to get to the next level. And
My apologies if the notion that there aren't many items running concurrent here wasn't conveyed, but we are exploring, the elevator is running, the reconnaissance is running.
okay, I appreciate that. So I guess one of the critical points for me is obviously, especially for the elevator, is if we have to do something this year, it'd be great and it'd be helpful. But if we have to do something, regardless of when that we have to do this, is a budget line that we weren't expecting to have. So I would like to have more solid information in that regards. Not only that, but if we have to do, if part of your proposal in regards to the community center talks about different things that we weren't thinking of doing it, that it will make sense for us to do it, it also has a budget impact into this. So either that budget impact has to be incorporated in 2022, but all that stuff needs to be done prior for us getting together on November to start looking into a budget. That's before November. We're talking about early September for the staff to actually start incorporating a lot of this stuff. So that's sort of, I don't want to say my concern, but those are my concerns. And I want to make sure we get to that point of getting those numbers for our next budget, regardless of what they are, or regardless of what the incorporation are. One thing that I was looking at this early today, actually, it was interesting. This is not for you, John. This is probably more for staff, that maybe we can look into it. Actually, the Poughkeepsie, the old YMCA is being purchased by the county and is being they're going to be providing about $10 million to actually put a new youth center there. So that I thought it was kind of interesting to see. Maybe we can, I'm not saying we should ask Poughkeepsie or them to give us some money, but we should look into possibilities for the county here in Westchester to give us some money in something like this, because we are adding a new youth center that hasn't been added in, how many years is that?
24.
Thank you. So we are compromised. We are adding something which brings a lot of value to our community that other communities do not have. So that's sort of my few comments for now, but thank you.
Hi, John. So it's good seeing you. Let me see. I think for me what's needs to be added is context, why we're here, what the desired outcome is of this project. We sort of got right into the weeds about doors and a laundry list of all this other stuff. So there's a few things that I think would be helpful. Number one, a timeline of when the board will see priorities and recommendation, either from staff and or from the consultants, the way we did it with a DPW site. Not like they're ready to show us something, can you put it on the agenda? But I'd like to see the next 2 or 3 times we're discussing this. It seems to me that the conversation is both about a building and about people. So what I might do differently, John, is think about the context of the humans involved in the community center. So it is true that they're underutilized spaces, as you stated. It is also true that they're overutilized spaces that do not accommodate. It is also true that there are spaces that might accommodate seniors, but are really being used by youth, and vice versa. So a conversation about both building and the human interaction to that building. I think I would have started, if I were to do this presentation again, with it's time to look at a building that the entire community uses. And the best use of that building would be A, B, C. Done. One of the things we have to do is look at the codes. It hasn't been looked at. For example, as a simple example to trustee, to Omar's, I'm so informal on these, I can never use the trustees. It's unbelievable. To Trustee Lopez's comment, the murals area, just so some of you know, if you haven't seen it, there happens to be a door, a double door that I think at one point was actually used for something that's actually half boarded up. We don't know what the door is there for, we're not sure. So there are some things that it's just an older building. It is very possible that the original design was fantastic, and over time, as people have a need, they come to the staff here or to the board, whoever's on the board, and says, I need a place for X. Okay, we'll do in the community center. I need a place for Y. We'll do in the community center. And 20 years later, we have a community center that has the entire alphabet soup shoved in all different corners. That's the context of why we need to do this. Within that, there's security issues. That would not be where I start. Within that, there's a security. And today, when this was built, the issue of security, where there are so many young children there, where there are locker rooms where people are showering and changing, where there's entrances that you should know who's in the building and who's not, and who leaves the building, so it's also the coming and going, and the technology, that to me is why this is the right time to do it. As for the budgets, that's going to be super. So either we should give him a budget, Karen, and say, you've got like $1 million, and I'll ask the board for it. What can you do for $1 million? If you go with the brick building and that laundry list, we're going to be having this discussion of priorities for 2 years. It's inevitable, because that's what we do. We sit there and go, there's an entire laundry list, and by the way, we can't figure out the priorities. So you either have to give them the suitcase and say, this is the size of the suitcase, what can you give me for that? Or say, I need you to prioritize building and people, and the board has to be involved. And I don't know who the we is, John, and all this we discussed, and we did this, and it can't just be staff, and it can't just be with architects, and it can't just be the board. It has to be a combination of all of that. I'm not saying that it won't be, but that to me is what's important. Security is a big deal in this day and age. It's just a fact of life, and when this building was done, it simply wasn't. But understanding, which is never in this presentation, by the way, and Bill Garrison can do this in 30 seconds off the top of his head, who uses the building, when, and who wants to use the building and currently can't. The fact that we get some grant to do a kitchen, while makes me very happy, is not a reason to rebuild things. You know, the grants aren't there, so now you build around the grant. It's a nice grant. The town and the village both use this. They could do it. The village should choose whether they want to take advantage of that moment or pass on that moment because they'd rather build something else. And there are a whole bunch of offices. And who uses them, when they use them. It is true that one of the priorities, I think, for your point of view, Karen, is that the Section 8 be moved there. That's a need that you currently have. It isn't what the community center was built for, and it isn't what the board had said, yeah, that's definitely my number one priority. But there seems to be an opportunity for that. That could be great. We went down there. I thought it was a great idea. We looked at different places. But it isn't what the community center generally has. So an explanation of the interaction of who needs it, when they need it. And I was really happy to hear that, at least from Paul's point of view, so the public hears this, because this gets recorded, is the parking, for once, is not driving a project. The parking will actually be. I personally am not as interested in the peripheral stuff, because I'm actually interested in the space we currently have, including, which wasn't really, I don't think it was shown that clearly, I don't know if you saw it, but it was a surprise to both of us that there is wonderful room outside, a multi-purpose room, that by making a few changes may, I don't want to say double, did it double the space? But probably added 35% of space, usable space for young people, for seniors. We were all very excited about that. But that again speaks to, this is what we need. And a priority has to be decided rather quickly. We never budgeted for this. And as we've all learned, if it ain't in the budget, it don't exist. So we will have to take money from Peter to give to Paul, or whatever the analogy is, and that concerns me on behalf of the people who pay taxes in our community. So my priority would be infrastructure, because it's an older building. How do people currently use it? Who isn't able to use it today that has told Bill Garrison, we'd like to use it, we can't leave them out, and restructuring office space and the museum space for actual needs that we have. To me, if you hit those three, the rest are really nice. Nice to haves and must haves are a totally different thing. And you have to come up with a budget, because budget A will get you one thing and budget B will get you four things. Otherwise, it becomes a lot of opinions. And I don't have a problem with the staff making all the recommendations, but I'd like to keep it on the community center. Once we add the elevator here and other buildings there, because John's company is involved with it, is a different conversation. That could be done, I think, as a, what's the infrastructure things that we might want to do, could be another presentation. Like, what infrastructure pieces, put them all together for us. That's really where I would go with this presentation. That wonderful presentation. I would like to see it, because we obviously didn't get a chance to see all the details, even though there's a lot of detail there. But for the framing, I think it would be helpful for us. Exactly the way you guys did, exactly the way Jaime did with you guys, with the DPW, that we knew in advance at each point what the next piece would be, how much money we'll be looking at, is super helpful.
Right. I couldn't agree more. And part of the reason we're having this discussion now to get to that point is because when we did do the budget for this, and Dale, you can help me out, we did budget for design and some construction work for during the budget process, very specifically for the elevator here, certain security features, you know, so it was a very prescripted view. Now, of course, going into it, then you see, well, if we do this, so it's always like changing, you know, getting a new, you really never want to just get a new pillow for the couch, because that just means you're going to redecorate your house. In this case, I think we're looking at a lot of opportunities.
True story.
And a lot of opportunities that have come out of this, some out of necessity, but also out of utility. And we are seeing different uses of this building now that we've focused everything on the ground floor. It doesn't mean that the elevator's not still a priority, but the functionality of people coming in and really basically going to one or two rooms to get their stuff done has changed the way we work, so it changes the needs in the building and the way we're doing things. And similarly, the pandemic's had a big impact on how we use the community center and its utilities. So all of this stuff is excellent. So I'm glad that we had this initial discussion, because it will help us now really put a different scope onto the projects and make sure that we're staying within budget and being effective and making sure that we're doing what the community needs.
And I think the other thing that we talked about when we were down there is communications. So there needs to be either signage or something that says that we are looking to enhance, and there's somebody, I don't think you're ready to do that yet. But on this, because right now it's a laundry list and wish lists and babies and priorities, but at some point, we cannot have one more project where we don't put some sign that says, this is like the idea, a drawing or something, so that people, when they go in there, say, oh, okay, this is what they're working on. Like, this one would be, a lot of people use this center, a lot of people from the community.
So that does provide us with an opportunity to do community engagement around this and look at it and do more of a utility analysis. So I think that that's something that we can do, which would keep everybody informed, and then also really make sure that we're prioritizing and doing things as efficiently as possible.
Yep. It's great. Anybody else? It's a work session, so it's a,
I think that idea of community engagement is really important, because that's who this facility is for. It's for the people who live here, and the people who use it probably have a lot of ideas, things that could be better, that they would like to see. And I think I mean, this is their house. This is their community center. You know, it's not it's ours, but it's for the people of this community. So I think it's a good idea. And you want people who use it to feel involved in what changes may be happening to it. So
I guess I just want to add to that is we just have to be careful, because we do have a budget, and we do have to control the narrative in that. And I don't want to say control, but just for like, we're going to be doing cosmetic stuff to enhance our community center. What is the stuff that you would like to see? Because look, a lot of people would like to add another floor to it, would like to do this, and that
Everybody
becomes a
wants
budget.
another pool.
So that's what I'm saying. Yeah, exactly, an outdoor pool. And I heard that a few times.
didn't we used to
actually.
have one?
We did.
in the
Long time
parking lot, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
When we first
So-
moved here, my husband would take my son there.
Yeah, so we just have to be careful in how we ask those things, because
Setting expectations.
exactly. We don't want
Sure.
So that's what that would be. Might be very cautious into something like that. That's all.
Agree. Definitely agree.
I think we have next steps, sort of, but the context, my thing is that we do presentations without context, as if it's being done for the staff that's been working on it, even though these meetings are recorded, and when the public looks at it, it's very confusing, because it's like coming into the middle of a novel, rather than the beginning of one. So I think context, and that'll allow you to set expectations, because all it might be is fixing some doors, putting cameras, repainting, and moving a couple of things around, because that's what we have. And it will be an improvement for sure, but it's not rebuilding the whole place. It could be bigger than that.
Well, I also know, I think the Sing Sing Prison Museum folks need some idea of, we need some idea of what's going to be kept from that and where it's going to be stored until it can be repurposed somewhere
Okay.
down at the,
I think you're talking.
I
you've
talked
got
to
that.
Brent about
Yeah.
it, because they
okay.
have a grant to move
Yeah.
the stuff anyway, so I think that we'll be working with them on.
and that also includes the Croton Aqueduct would also go, that part?
We're looking at other things that we could do, so we may be reaching out, but obviously, we won't dismantle things without having a place and a purpose, figuring out what we want to do. There's some really nice features in there,
There are,
but they're not, again, nobody really sees them, so it would be good to get them where they're going to be seen and utilized.
Great. Anybody in the gallery? Like, are there, Paul, we're good? Dale? Everybody? Well, Bill's there.
Oh, he just got it, okay, he's been having connectivity issues.
And Joe's there. Okay, great. Village manager?
So, As you know, we got a generous urban forestry grant, and we have planted 80 trees in the village. And we worked with SavATree. So tonight we have our guests from SavATree and our assistant village manager, Maddi, Zachacz, who spearheaded this project, talking about providing a project review, which is part of our grant fulfillment here, and to tell us a little bit more about this project. And again, we're glad to have SavATree representatives here as well. So they were a great help during this process.
Okay, thank you, Manager DeTore. Good evening, members of the board. So yes, as Manager DeTore mentioned, we did get a grant from the DEC to plant some number of trees, and we got it all the way up to 80, which we're very proud of. In working with the DEC on this, we have become, and I think Jean and Matt, who are on from SavATree, will sort of back me up on this, something of a poster child for how fast and how well we turned this project around. So we had our kickoff meeting, I believe, in February, and the trees were all in the ground by the first week in June. Matt and Jean from SavATree were our arborist consultants on the project, and so I'm going to turn it over to Jean, who has a short slideshow just of some photos, so she can sort of show you the project progression, and she and Matt are going to sort of talk about the project from inception to the end, and this actually predates me, and so that's why I'm glad that Bill Garrison is still on the call. This was sort of his vision and how this project came together, so I want to thank him and his staff as well. And Jean, I will turn it over to you.
Sorry. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes. Welcome.
Can you hear me? Okay. Hi. So I'm Jean Zimmerman, and I'm an arborist with SavATree, and that's the tree care company with its home base in Westchester County. So some of you may even have worked with SavATree in your yards. I don't know. But we do things besides work with people in their yards. We also work on municipal projects and corporate projects and stuff like that. So we were interested in working with Ossining because Ossining, while in so many ways it's a wonderful place to live and work and play, and I can say that having lived for 10 years in Ossining, so I liked it. But Ossining saw that something needed to be addressed. And that it did so is testimony to some very smart and savvy people, both in the municipal government and in the community at large. They work together. They decided to address an issue that a lot of towns are talking about these days. All right, trying to. Okay. What people are talking about, the buzzword is canopy cover or lack of canopy cover. And what that means is that trees are supposed to shade the populace and will save electricity and will even promote health. And canopy even improves mood, and that makes a lot of sense when you think about a person standing under a green leafy tree on a hot summer day like we had today. These are some of the pictures that Maddi gave me that were used for the the application for the DEC. So this is what the two parks, Nelson Park and Nelson City Park, what they looked like before the trees came. So when you lack canopy, it's important because when you get what is called the heat island effect, and for a neighborhood that uses these parks as basically its backyard, that's really crucial. I mean, some of us, we live in nice houses, we have yards, we have trees all around shading us, but if you don't have that, if you live in a small apartment and this is your backyard and it doesn't have any canopy, it doesn't have any shade, then it's really unfortunate. And I like this, for some reason I washed the color out of these pictures, but I like it because it shows, I think, what essentially these grounds were like when I first saw them, when I visited for SavATree. And it was as though all the color had been bleached out of the landscape. So now I'm going to show you some nice pictures of the project. We're going to go back to how the project happened, but this is the day when the planting started. Some more pictures of people you know probably. Our DEC forester is here. His name is George Profus, and I'm sorry he couldn't be here tonight. So when the village of Ossining applied to the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, which was awarding grants to municipalities for projects like tree inventories, tree maintenance, or tree planting, it's a very competitive grant cycle. And only 5 communities in Westchester County were chosen this time. And among them, the village and town of Ossining. So that's really something to be proud of. I know the people at DEC, and their process is absolutely grueling. You really have to jump through hoops to get a grant from them. So once Ossining won the grant for tree planting, again, a nice shot of people putting a tree in the ground. What happened? Well, some people that you know were essential to the process, among them Maddi, of course, also Donna Sherritt, Susie Ross, Green Ossining. I got the feeling that everybody came together and was so invested in doing this project that it was really amazing. It wasn't just SavATree, and it wasn't just 1 or 2 people. It was a whole lot of people. So one person that I want to introduce you to, this is Matt Weibel, and he was the principal field arborist for this project. I sort of helped to set it up, but he took it and he did everything that needed to be done. So he managed the transformation of the parks, and he's going to tell you about the stages of the project, how he chose the trees, how he made sure that they were in good shape, how he got them to Ossining, and finally what it took to put them in the ground. So Matt, take it away.
Thank you. Hello everyone. As Jean said, my name is Matt Weibel, consulting arborist at SavATree. So kind of the first step, obviously it's great you got a grant to plant 80 trees and purchase 80 trees, but before you can even purchase the trees, you figure out where they're going to go in the ground. Kind of the first step in that was meeting with Maddi and Bill, Parks and Rec, and kind of getting their input too, because if I can go to the park and say, yeah, put 80 trees here, no problem, but you also have to count into the functionality and use of the park. So kind of my original idea was to put kind of a line around the entire walkway at Nelson Park, but then after seeing the parks, you realize, well, we do 2 soccer fields here, so once the trees grow, they're going to impact the soccer field. We really can't put trees everywhere originally thought. So we kind of worked collaboratively, found other areas, and realized also weren't considering the lower portion where's a playground. We were looking to put some trees down there too, experiment a little bit more, and still keep the function of the park with all the baseball field and the soccer fields. Still being able to use those, not reducing our play space, but also getting trees in areas where the shade and the visual, the aesthetic will have the greatest impact. So after settling on that plan, I then met with Rolf Nursery out in Armonk. They went through a bidding process, they won the bid. So I went out there, met with the owner of the nursery. One of the requirements of the DC grant is that all the trees planted have to be native plant material. You can't do solely non-invasive plants, you don't want to do non-natives. So that kind of limited somewhat our options. This was kind of a later in the year grant, so there's some limitations to what they had at the nursery, but we were able to get 80 trees. And actually one of the benefits perhaps of being a little bit later was that we were able to get a couple really nice flowering trees. We got a couple of red buds and some yellow woods. And normally at DC, I want you to kind of focus more on the larger shade trees. So these two trees in particular are very good, because they, like I said, they flower nicely, they're really good for the bees, you know, insect population, so they get a little bit of more benefit, besides just the shading and the aesthetics. So it was really nice, it was really happy to get a couple of those trees mixed in too. So once they were chosen, Roth delivered them, with them a couple days early actually, but we were able to, Maddi and Bill were able to find a place to put them. In the meantime, we keep them watered until planting day. So the planting day, so you have a decent sized crew there, that's Parks and Rec crew. George, who you see there next to me in that photo from DEC, decided to put volunteers between us and other places. So we have a good team there. Basically, what you're seeing here is kind of the Baldwin burlap trees, the way it's retained, they'll come wrapped in burlap, wire basket. It's important to cut all that rope off, move the burlap from the sides, cut the wire, but leave the wire in place. What happens is the roots might grow through the wire, but then as the roots grow, you burrowed by that wire. Or if you don't move the burlap, the roots can't get out. It's kind of circling that root ball until the burlap disintegrates, and by then it might be too late and have circling, drilling roots going on in the tree. So what we were told the crew about is really just you have to cut all that apart, dig down, get rid of the excess soil, make sure that the actual flare of the root, where the roots leave the trunk. They often add a couple extra inches of soil at the nursery before they fall in. Through that whole process, make sure you have the hole for the tree is wide enough. Get rid of the burlap, get rid of the wire, get rid of the rope, dig down till you find. So the root flare, it's okay to break up the root ball, let through the excess soil, make sure the roots aren't currently girdling or circling, kind of pull them out if they are. And then what you see there is kind of the final project, the final aesthetic, where it's in the ground, mulched properly, not too deep over the root ball. There's also actually a tree diaper, I think in this photo you can't see. But below the mulch, the tree diaper is almost like these gator bags. It's kind of a watering mechanism, but these ones are a little better than gator bags, so you can't see them. You go around the kind of base of the tree there. They kind of absorb the water and slowly release the water over time. So instead of we got there and watering every single day with a hose, you water less frequently, maybe weekly. And then even as it rains, it kind of absorbs that water too and kind of holds it there a little bit longer. So there's some kind of final over there, the lower section of Nelson Park, or by the playground. We get a few trees in there, provide some shading in the future for the playground area, which should be really nice. And yes, we're able to get all the 8 trees in the ground. And what I'd love to do is come back with a 1-year warranty from the nurseries and go back next year, late April, early May, kind of to go walk around, reassess all the trees, make sure they're all still healthy and alive, or if they need to be replaced, and we'll make sure to make that happen before the 1-year warranty runs out. But as of right now, they're all still looking pretty good. So I think
Thank you, Matt. Matt is like a arboricultural genius, savant. So he did a great job on that. And if anybody has any questions for Matt or for me, then we're happy to answer them.
Thank you.
I can start. Thank you for the presentation. Super helpful. We've had a lot of rain recently, and I'm wondering how periods of I don't know if this has been extreme weather exactly, but more intense weather than usual might affect these little trees.
One of the areas you see here, the lower area by the playground, is to be generally wet. We actually put more trees than originally, but the holes were wet when we dug them, so we didn't put trees there. But we chose species for those areas that do like the wetter soil a little bit better, so hopefully they'll be okay. But in general, newer plant trees, it's hard to really overwater them too much. You certainly can, but this gets so hot during the day and dries out so fast that the rains really shouldn't be a problem. Some will consider the high winds, they do kind of shift them in the root balls a little bit. Young trees can be takes a little while for the roots to really get established, so really want to check that after these kind of sort of make sure they're not leaning now, and if so, just stake some of them. We didn't really stake too many of the trees originally, because it's best not to, but if they do kind of shift, then we would need to.
Okay.
Got it. Okay. And how long does it take for them to be fully grown?
Fully grown, like 80, 100 feet tall. some of these trees will be that big, but that takes a good 75, 80 years. But I mean, after, 20, 30 years, you'll see really good growth, and they'll be, like trees that you like to see, starts, can't just start to touch, and some of the places we plant them at 30, 40 feet across, look at that nice kind of allay effect along the walkway and some areas across the walkway.
Thanks. And what kind of, do you need to use fertilizer with these kind of trees? And if so, what kind?
Doesn't need to. I like to recommend a biostimulant product from their first plant, help push new root growth out initially, help them kind of get established a bit quicker. It's not essential required. It does help. Otherwise, if there's nutrient deficiency in the soil, and you really want to fertilize to correct that deficiency. But not generally, you don't need to fertilize with nitrogen in trees.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Questions, comments?
I just want to say thank you, Maddi, and everybody that actually worked on this project. I drive by that park every day, and I do take some walks over there with my daughter, and it's really nice to see that. We actually did plant some trees, I want to say 2012, 13 in that area as well. But it's always nice to see more trees, definitely. So thank you.
Okay. Sorry.
Oh, I just learned something about tree equity recently. And this is kind of a big deal, and you can have a score for, I guess it's the percentage of canopy that you have in your village. Our score is under 40%. It's not good, right? So it's just going to increase our, and tree equity is actually what you were talking about, that people who aren't lucky enough to have nice yards with big trees often don't have trees in their outdoor spaces, which and that's actually a health situation. So hopefully our tree equity score will go up now, right?
The temperatures in places that don't have a lot of trees can be 10 degrees higher
Yeah.
in the summertime than places that do have trees. And if somebody has lives in a place and they can't afford air conditioning, that makes a huge difference.
Anybody else? I just, if you don't mind, I always go last. So thank you. I know you're down there. My friend Jamie, who's like always sure to communicate this stuff in every one of my mayor's updates. A reminder, and I even apologized a bit this week in my mayor's update that I talked so much about it, but it lowers carbon emission, which is, if you're into any environmental causes worldwide, that's like the number one thing you want to look at in whatever you do. I don't know if living in apartments is a good or bad thing. Some people live in them because they prefer to live in them, and they're very nice, big apartments. But the concept of a community at large and having both open space, green space, and trees is super important. And in fact, in this particular park, there's houses around them. But on the other side, my parents lived right across from this park. And on the other side, and I used to hang out with my kids there, always complaining about how hot it is, because by the trail where you take a walk with the baby stroller, with your kids, the grandkids. So I'm excited just from a humanistic point of view. But I do want to get that score up higher, so I'm thinking we're going to have to plant trees like on every corner. But people did write to me and say, I can't believe you talk so much about trees, which is why I defended it. There's an actual reason for it. It's also a pollinator path for some. It's the birds who feed the world, and people don't realize there's like a real purpose. There's like a lot of really great things, and for those of us who are fortunate enough to grow in more rural areas, I was not one of those people, but for those that were, they're just used to seeing a lot of trees and don't think much about it. But in more mixed environments like suburbs, it's actually a big deal that you have to sort of maintain a balance of people, green space, and trees, and shrubs, and native plants, and all the other stuff. And that's becoming a big issue for people. And some people just move in and just cut down all their trees, because I don't think they recognize the importance of them. So I'm hoping we're educating. I only use that as a segue that I think there will be part of this where we will be putting some signage to explain. There was a lot of thought about what kind of trees to use and all that. So I think that's really cool, and it's sort of a cool thing about living in this community, and it also keeps the soil in place. If any of us have ever seen houses slide, because people cut trees down and there was no roots in the ground, so all good stuff. So I really appreciate all the work. I will continue to talk about trees in my mayor's update. Even for those of you that complain that I talk too much about it, I don't care. So I appreciate you bringing up the equity issue, and I'm turning it over to Maddi because I know you want to say, but I do want to thank all of you guys because there were a lot of people involved in making sure it's done correctly.
Yeah, I do just want to say just one more thing, and they're all thank you. So I wanted to thank Jean and Matt. Donna Sherritt and Susie Ross were huge assets on this project, as were the volunteers that came to help us plant from Green Ossining. George Profis, who was our regional forester, loved this project so much, he actually came back with his camera several days later so that he could take pictures. And Bill Garrison, obviously, whose vision it was to do this project. But I did want to shout out sort of the unsung heroes of this project, which is Bill's staff. I have never seen such dedication to getting something right. All of those gentlemen, they happen to all be gentlemen, paid such close attention to what Jean and Donna and Matt and George had to say. Each tree was treated the same way as the first one in terms of, getting it set up properly and making sure that it was straight and, appropriately deep in the ground. They take such incredible pride in their work, and it was really an honor to work alongside them. So I wanted to make sure they got a shout out in
I'm
this
glad you
process
did
too.
that. I drove by there and it was really hot.
It was, Jamie and I were melting.
It was, I went, you guys had just left. It was unbelievably hot, and they were there, like, really doing their job. I'm glad you said that.
And we also did a bilingual tree planting demonstration, which is up on YouTube, so you can view it there through the village's site. Donna Sherritt did the English, and then our Parks foreman, Miguel Mara, did the Spanish translation.
Nice.
And Jamie did the filming.
Thank you. Village manager. Thank you all as well over there. We see you on Zoom for participating.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Next, we will be discussing the consolidated funding application. The consolidated funding application is a vehicle for the state to put out grant applications. It's really sort of meant to bring the many different agencies together in one place so that when you apply, everything's right there. So these are applying for grants from many different agencies. If you remember, in 2019, the Village of Ossining was awarded $3 million for a water treatment plant. We were also awarded monies for renovation, rehabilitation, anyway.
Remediation? There we go.
Remediation of 200 Main Street and our parking study. Last year, there were no grant applications due to COVID, the pandemic, but this year, we will be applying again, and right now we've identified 3 areas, 2 studies. One is working, this came to us from Trustee Fritchie with a discussion on working to consolidate the physical structures of our firehouses, not necessarily the companies, but the physical structures, and lo and behold, there's a grant for that. And we also are looking at a economic development grant that builds on the work that the village had done previously in looking at village-owned lots, predominantly Main Street area, and how those can be re-envisioned. It also addresses, builds on some of our parking discussions in the interest of economic development and recovery. And the third grant is a salt shed. It's a capital project grant for a salt shed for the Department of Public Works. So with that, I would like to turn this over to Assistant Village Manager Maddi Zachacz and our Director of Public Works, Paul Fraioli.
Okay, thank you, Karen. Hello again, everyone. So as Manager DeTore just mentioned, we have 3 grants in the pipeline. Paul, would you like to talk first about the one for the salt shed?
So the facet that we are applying for is under the Water Quality Improvement Project Program, WQIP program, and that is money made available up to $500,000 with a 3% required match, 50% of the award, so the required match is a minimum of $450,000 if you get the full $500,000 towards your project. This is a project that is looking to focus on water quality improvements, and as you know, improper storage of salt and the loading areas of salt can contribute to salt making its way into receiving streams, and we don't want that because that has an impact on the aquatic life on the receiving streams. So up at the operations center right now, we have a pretty extensive stormwater treatment measures in place. When we did the new garage in the back, we put stormwater measures in place, including infiltrators, separators, and polishing ponds before it's discharged into Betts Park. And I know that the positive impact on the aquatic life in the Betts Park pond has been immeasurable compared to maybe what it used to receive prior to the construction of the new highway garage in the back. So that said, we want to maintain that level of environmental protection. And when I saw this grant come up, it was really coincided with something I've been thinking about for a few years now relative to our salt storage that we have at the operations center. Many of you all have been up here and drove around the back towards the central garage entrance. You can see that the present salt storage that we have right now is under a tarpaulin system underneath a skeleton, structural skeleton with a tarp, fitted tarp, covering approximately 500 or 600 tons of salt. That's basically our maximum storage. I wouldn't call it crude. I mean, it's been effective over the years, but there has been a few times over the years that because of the logistics associated with salt delivery and the procurement requirements on salt, we've been a little pressured sometimes with making sure that we have enough salt here for storms that are of a long duration, or when we go into seasons where it's below freezing for extended periods, and we have a lot of thawing and then refreezing going on for a long duration snowstorm. We get very low on salt. We haven't ran out, but it's something that is, I'll say it's on borrowed time. It's time that we really look at our salt storage system and erect something that's larger and also as environmentally responsible as, at a minimum, that's what we're doing now. So last week or a couple of weeks ago, we approached a firm that just erected a salt dome for Westchester County down on their grasslands facility. It's maybe a little larger than we were looking to do, but it has a lot of ancillary benefits, including some outbuildings that allow coverage of some things that we don't have covered right now from the elements, including the loader and other systems that go along with the salt operation and winter operations. Bringing that all indoors really protects the integrity of the salt and the integrity of the stormwater collection system. And it's something that I think this facility is long overdue to have on this site. The increased size of it will also give us the benefit of peace of mind during storms that last multiple days, where we don't have to worry and depend on the state salt supplier getting truck deliveries down to us in inclement weather, or in some cases driver shortage, or other issues like that, where the salt comes into the distribution facilities throughout the state. There's myriad of reasons on why the salt can be delayed, and the more you're able to store on site, the more peace of mind we have to know that we can attack storms like they need to be addressed.
How much is this slated for?
Yep, so what we did was we had a couple meetings with the engineers and who were doing the application for us, and using the barometer of the project they just completed for Westchester County a couple of years ago, we're looking at a estimate of $2 to $2.5 million for overall project costs. That includes soft costs, it includes the salt dome structure, roughly 3 times the size of what we have now, or up to 2,000 tons of salt at any one time. It includes the ability to have the delivery trucks dump the salt in an interior enclosed space, so they don't have to leave it out in the elements. They come here in an off hour and dump it when we're not here, which, you know, is quite often the case. And a lot of other outbuildings to protect, like I said, some of the other equipment associated with our salt system. We don't have to take it much further than the concept design that we have now for the application, because we really can't take it that far along. There's really no need for it, and a lot of the things that we need for the application we're getting together now. I know that Assistant Manager Zachacz is putting together some of the CFA material relative to some of our policies that need to go along with the application. I've already spoke with Joe Gustinelli, who's getting together the floodplain maps for this site. And I met with the engineers the other day and already gave them our MS4 program, which is our annual stormwater filing, along with some project information and some budget information that they're going to submit on our behalf as part of that agreement that they have with us executed last week to submit on our behalf.
How much is the grant? Did you say 450?
The grant maximum award is 500,000.
500,000.
50% match.
So we would have to match 250
If we did the whole amount, yes.
if we did the whole thing. $2.5 million. And what's the life of this construction? It's one of these things that lasts forever, or there's a 20-year life, or 30-year? What is the?
Well, yeah, I think that, you know, the structure is intended to be just like any institutional or commercial industrial building. It's as long as you can maintain it and the systems within that building, the lifespan is indefinite.
Okay.
The tarpaulin system that we have now, I think that was anticipated to be used for a couple of years until we relocated to this site. That tarp was, I believe, something that was purchased after Tropical Storm Floyd as an emergency measure to cover our salt.
Okay,
We obviously went well past the emergency measure.
right. You're on?
Okay, thank you, Paul. So I don't have nearly as much to say on the other two, but as Karen mentioned, we do have 2 other ones that we are actually writing in-house. So it's been a fast and furious writing couple of weeks for the manager's office. The first is a downtown planning study through Empire State Development, which is the same agency that brought us the mobility and parking study. And there's up to $2 million available for the entire state. The maximum funding we could receive is $100,000 with a $50,000 cash match. And basically, as Manager DeTore mentioned, we are looking at everyone's favorite, the Main and Spring Street lots 5 and 6, and sort of reimagining what those would be if they were not parking lots. Now, I know you're thinking, this sounds very familiar, and it should, because the village did a very similar study a couple years ago. And basically, they looked at highest and best use for the parcels, but it seemed as though what was really missing from that study was the community engagement part. So it predates me, but it seems as though that may have been one of several reasons why it didn't really get off the ground. Am I close?
We're looking at you. She's asking. I'm curious.
You asking? Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I thought you were gonna finish. So I
Work
guess.
session. We don't have to be so formal.
Okay. So I guess I'm the only one who was part of that the study.
I think it was
And,
2013.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, 13,
before me
14.
too.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Yes. So that I want to say that was my first term, and not for lack of interest, but I think we did a lot of engagement because there was a lot of people in there. We did a lot of that stuff. So I'm not sure if lack of engagement, we didn't go through it. I think the concept of that was a little bit different of the vision of some of the trustees, of some of the board itself. On the mix, one of the things that we did move forward from that is the two-way.
Right, Spring Street.
The Spring Street, which that's a different topic of conversation, but that it still need to be, as Paul knows, we still have temporary signs in there. That was sort of a result of one of the decisions that we took. I'm curious to learn more about the grant because I thought we had a different concept of how we're going to be moving forward in those particular lots in response to the RFQ that we did for the old DPW site, because we were taking that as example of what could we do on those over public lots. So I'm curious to learn more about what you guys are, what this grant is about.
Yeah,
So-
that's still the plan. So the understanding is that the grant for the study would basically be looking at lots 5 and 6 and doing something very similar to what the team did in 2013. Basically, what's the highest and best use? I know the Village Green was a really big component, but then also how will the parking that we lose be offset? So this is all bundled together with envisioning a parking structure on Lot 8, which is behind Main Street. And basically, what this would be doing is setting up the groundwork to, as soon as this project was done, if we do get the grant, to creating an RFQ. To basically say, we've already decided, the board decided they like option 11 that came out of this study. Now we're going to write an RFQ based on option 11.
Why is everybody looking at me?
Nobody's looking at you.
I mean, I'm looking at you. Okay. Well, I can go on to the other one, and then if there's questions about both. Okay, so then the second one is through the Department of State. It's the Local Government Efficiency Program, and that's basically an opportunity for communities all across the state to look at consolidation opportunities. So we have asked the town of Ossining to partner with us, since they do, pay into the Ossining Fire Department. And what is available is, it's not very much money, $12,500 for each municipality, so a total of $25,000, and then we each need to do a 50% match on that. So the total for the village to put in would be $6,250. Total from the town, $6,250. That gets us to a project total of $37,500. And basically, I got to learn an awful lot about the fire department going back to the study that was completed in 2008 and 2009, which looked at a much broader scope than what we're considering here. It didn't only look at the facilities and the equipment, the apparatus. It also looked at the composition of the membership and why people wanted to be volunteer firefighters, and why they chose Ossining, and why they chose different components of how they decide to be civic-minded. So both of those components are still going to be important in revisiting that, because as we look at a consolidation of facilities, we want to make sure that the fire department works with us hand in glove in sort of understanding the intricate details of how the houses work together. And so we actually went back to the folks who did the study back in 2008. They're both still working. They gave us a quote to do a narrower scope, and basically, look at, some of the firehouses. How could we do things better? How could we make things safer? There's a lot of safety components to what they're looking to study. And so we're hoping that this could be a win-win for everyone, to, consider either the placement of a new facility or an expanded facility on one of the sites that will help to sort of modernize so that they can fit the apparatus, properly into the stations. And at the same time, potentially look at, one of the properties and seeing if it could be used for a different purpose in the village. If there are any questions, the reason we're bringing all 3 of these to you this week is because we're on sort of a tight timetable here. I'm looking to submit by next Friday. It's looking less and less likely by the moment, but that is my plan. But that still builds us next Friday, the 23rd.
They're actually due the
They're due on the
following
30th, but I want to build in a good cushion there.
We build in that little wiggle room.
But we're going to be asking you to pass 3 resolutions at next week's meeting for the match component, so that if we do get the grant, we can say, that the village board has already committed those funds.
Cool.
Why is everyone looking at me?
I'm into it.
Okay, so 3 different grants, all have a timeline. One involves the towns, so they announced, so they had, when I spoke to you, they've already gone through the salt issue, the downtown, all of which are really huge. My ongoing concern about grants is that it's like a sliver of money that we then have to match, and there's no ramp for actually doing the project, because not only are the grants too small to actually do anything, but they then get all these expectations and everybody gets really excited, and then we can't do. But what we were able to pay is for the consultants to tell us what we could have done if we had the money. So grants always sound really sexy to me, and I appreciate the work, but I think we also have to like sort of set expectations of what they do. So totally three different grants are not related. They're just all things you're working on, just so people understand that. And we'll have to right-size them. Like, I don't know if we need such a huge, cavernous building for the salt versus a smaller one. Consolidation means looking at what we may need, and may also talk about closing down some of the firehouses, all these things, and opening another one somewhere because our population, that study for the firehouses were done 13 years ago. 13 years has seen a demographic shift, and you're not really planning for today because nobody plans for today. You're supposed to be planning for the next 10 years. So you have to sort of do some predictive modeling about what you're going to need across the different parts of the community. I just do want to say, since it's a public meeting and everything gets recorded before everybody jumps and says, why are they doing this in the middle of the village? And why are they closing firehouses? That these are studies. We also, when we get the grants, it has to come back to the board whether we want to go forward. Because I personally am in a minority, and I know this. I'm not a fan of all these grants. It puts us and backs us into corners that we can't get ourselves out of. And then we have a lot of studies sitting on a lot of shelves that have to sit there that we don't use. Like the conversation we just had about something that was done a number of years ago, but nothing was done with it, except to upset people. So I just want to I am so grateful that we have grant writing going on, because for years we haven't. And I work in not-for-profit, and I know how valuable this is. I gotta have it balanced, though, so I'm looking at you, because it's gotta be balanced. Just because it's there doesn't mean we're gonna jump on it, because it costs millions after we spend $50,000 for consultants to tell us things. I wanna set some expectations about, thank you for doing all this. I know we're in grant season. The town is also in a big race for the grants, but I have a slightly different view about just taking things because they're available rather than because they're necessary.
So the grants, there was probably, I don't know, a couple hundred grants, so we do have, we do go through, I think it's important to say for the public that as we're going through, we look at things based on either things that we're doing or our high need. If it's something that would mean that we'd be doing a project that we wouldn't consider for the next 5 years, it doesn't come under consideration.
So I just want to make a point of clarity when the mayor refers to closing firehouses. Does not mean that we're getting rid of companies. It means that we're consolidating. That's all. We're not getting rid of companies. So please, for the public and who's watching and who may watch, we're not getting rid of companies.
I just also want to say about the local government efficiency grant, just because I neglected to mention, there's actually two different types of grants in that category. One is the planning, and then one is the implementation. So typically, if you jump through all the hoops, if you get the planning grant, you jump through all the hoops and you do what you're supposed to do, then you can throw your hat in the ring for the implementation, which is up to $400,000. So again, if we're building a new firehouse, $400,000 is, not going to get us all the way there, certainly, but $400,000, would help, certainly, so.
$400,000 on a $2.5 million project related to salt doesn't get us all that far for a community of our size. So again, my comment was, I don't want to, not that this is what's happening, I don't want people thinking that it's an immediate, like, this is what's happening.
Correct.
It's exactly like, we're going to look at it, we're going to do what needs to be done, or we're going to say, thank you, we're not doing any of this particular grant, but we might do, it's good, we're just going to pass on it. So that was the point, that we are not jumping and doing everything, but we're taking opportunities to learn about a few things. More than a few, actually, but thank you. Anybody else? Looking around? Nope.
So,
Sorry. Good.
do you need our support today, or is it next week?
Nope, it's next week.
Next week.
So I do have a couple things, I guess. Thanks, Maddi, and you're right, Mayor. For years, we were actually neglected in all the grant writing that we not as much as we have done in the past 2 years, but prior to that, we didn't get a lot of grants. And the past 2 years, we've been getting a lot more substantial grants, which is definitely helpful for us. But do we have, I haven't followed this, and probably I should have taken a minute last week to see this, but the DRI, they're not doing anything this year, sure?
They kind of teased it, but it
That's
doesn't
what I
sound
remember
good.
say, yeah.
Yeah,
So
they-
there's other stuff that he's doing, but there's nothing like that in
No.
regards to that. So yeah, that's what I thought. I just wanted to double check that. But I'm gonna agree with the mayor on some of this grant process, sure, because I've been sitting in this table for quite a while, and I've seen grants and I've seen studies that literally have sat on the shelves. I'm in favor of the study of the of the consolidation of the firehouses. I'm in favor of the shed because I think it's needed. Actually, it was interesting because I was in a meeting yesterday on Phillipstown, and I was in front of the conservation board. I'll talk to you about that, Jaime, later. You'll have a laugh about it. But it was a project that actually spent a lot of money because they were putting a saltwater pool, and they needed to contain the overflow of that. So it was very interesting. So I get that and what we should be doing in regards to that. It's still not clear to me, though, about the grant on another study, and what those two parking lots could be and what they should be. We do have a study right now on Nelson Nygaard that hopefully will be soon coming in front of us again in regards to parking and some of the implementation in there. We did the study, and we paid a lot of money for that a couple of years back in regards to those two sites. We have, and the intent at that moment was to see what could be there as a volumetric study, and that's all it was. Several years after that, we did ask people what would they like to see there. You know, we went through all these vignettes. You know, we did all that stuff. So we know what we have. So my opinion, this grant won't get us anywhere more than where we already are. I think for me it will be more effective sending in an RFP or an RFQ for those two sites to get us to where we are. We know we need a parking lot. We know we're gonna have a problem with parking. So that study already that we're gonna be seeing that we already had a grant for is telling us that because it's focusing in downtown. Those two parking lots are part of the downtown. So I'm not sure if I'll be in favor of that. That's just my opinion right
But
now.
that's not for
But
next.
yes.
That's not for next week, because
That is for next week, because
Yeah.
that's part of the resolution.
Next week, you'll have a resolution for the match for each of the three
them.
projects,
So
yes.
there'll be three of them.
It
Okay.
the match doesn't mean that you'll get the project.
Correct.
You know, I do, you know, it's something that, you know, part of getting the project is the intent to go through it, and it's, you don't really want to be in a position to pass on something that you applied for, because you know, the intent and then the match is indicating that this is a priority. So, again, we're bringing these forward. If there's, you know, deep-seated reservations about any of them on the board, I would actually recommend that we do not apply, because it's really not a good idea to get money and then turn it down.
Because they
So.
put the village manager's face on one of those boards and say, next time you see from her,
They might
we're
not
not giving her money.
So I think that, you know, what we can do is, though, I think to make it easier, because without the context, and Trustee Quesada, I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's the village also, you know, we're talking about, you know, we have been talking to the Downtown Development Fund Council and other entities in the village who are anxious for economic development recovery. That's the impetus of that grant. I do know that you know, there have been a lot of ideas put forward. It is probably going to continue to come up because it's village-owned property that could be redeveloped in a myriad of different ways. So whether or not we want to go forward with a grant, it's probably at some point looking at it. I think this grant, though, took into consideration the fact that, Maddi, when you were looking at this, the cost, were you going to ask for the full amount? Were we going to ask?
We haven't gotten a quote yet from the folks who did the 2013 study, which is what we were going to use to go forward
need a
with building
quote
a
for a
budget. So
benchmark.
he's supposed to get to me, I think, tomorrow or Friday morning.
So we'd like to, what I'd like to say is, let's see the quote and the scope before, you know, and that way we can give you the drafts so that you can really you have the full picture of everything that we're doing, because while I agree very much that we should not be spending money for things that we don't need, for things that we think we're going to have an interest in the relatively short term, we should start laying that pipe. And I have a strong dislike of any studies that sit on the shelf, so it really is the goal of anything that we do. It becomes actionable. Otherwise, there's no point in doing it for the sake of doing it. So I couldn't agree with you more, but we can give you more information on that, so
That'll be
you
great.
can feel comfortable about it.
Dana, anything? We're good? Yep. Okay. I realized that usually I go last. I didn't go last, so just want to make sure everybody gets a chance. What do we got next?
Okay, so at the beginning of the year, we had discussed, the board was discussing the creation of a new alternative village seal. Those discussions are still going on, and this is an opportunity for the board to discuss next steps on the progression of the village seal.
I think that's the cue for Dana White. Trustee White, what do you got for us? And I think Manny also.
Well, we've actually made
Sure.
progress. The artist, Danny Avelis, is got everything he needs to start working on preliminary sketches. I created a Dropbox for him. I put in the survey. I put in bunches of images that corresponded to the survey results, the sorts of things that people felt were emblematic of the village. So lots of photographs that he could use for inspiration. The other thing that we've done is I'm a liaison to the Ossining Arts Project, and it occurred to me that they could actually be an asset in this since they're artists. And this is basically an artistic endeavor. And so I spoke with Bradley Morrison, the chair, about providing feedback and assistance to Danny as he works, being as how there are visual artists on the Ossining Arts Project, and they agreed. And so we're hoping a proposed timeline would be for, by the August meeting of the OAP, that Danny and would have some initial designs that he could show for feedback and discussion to the Ossining Arts Project. And we could even invite other select members of the community who are in the arts, who are professional graphic artists, to give their feedback as well. And then he would go back and revise. And then at that point, we would be in a position to start presenting them to the board this fall. I mean, my thought was that we would have 3 options. And that we could sort of, I don't want to go too far down the road before the board has a chance to see anything, obviously.
Right.
So you, of course, board would be involved in the process. But I think the arts project, would be, it helps provide a structure for the project. It's a committee, it's a village committee, so I think this definitely falls under their purview, and they're happy to help.
Great.
So the goal is to have a new seal by the end of the year.
Anybody else?
Yes, I do. Thanks, Dana. That's actually, you kind of mentioned that a couple of weeks back, at least in a small conversation that we have. So I'm in favor of that. But Bob, you are involved on this as well, because I remember the two of you kind of got selected to kind of work on the seal. Are you in any involvement on this at all?
Oh, thank you. Not recently. I will talk to Trustee White when we get done tonight.
Well, I did send an email about the Ossining Arts Project participation, and I know, Bob, that you have certain things that you really want to see in that seal. So of course, that will, everyone will be involved. I will say that we had a subcommittee that was me and Bob, and then it seemed like people forgot that there was a subcommittee. So I was a little bit confused, but, when we have Bob, you can, of course, join any OAP meetings to talk about it. You will see them. There's not anything that's going to be done without full transparency, so.
Right. Anybody else? I wanted to say that this is a project, for those that follow this, we had a survey out from this board, got results, gives direction of whether to have a new seal or not. Yes, we're going to have a new seal. Just wanted to mention that during the pandemic, we actually tried to reach the artist a number of times. He actually got busy with his career, which that's going to have to take a priority over some of the work that's being done. So for those wondering why we're talking about it in July and not, let's say, in February or March, it was not for lack of effort nor intentions, but we do appreciate that he got so busy at his own job. With
He
so
works
much
in the
work.
film business, which is
Yeah.
pretty much pretty crazy hours, but he has time this summer and into the fall, and he is dedicated.
Right.
To-
Oh, no,
to
no,
doing
no
it,
reflection on him.
so-
We're happy that somebody's got work during a pandemic. That's a good thing. That's a very hard-hit industry. But for those wondering why it's running late, it's not running late. An artist was chosen. He got busy in his jobs, and that's a good thing. The other good thing about it is that we got the arts. I would suggest, if at all possible, to have something cemented, not at the end of the year, but somewhere closer to October, September, October,
Right.
if it's possible, because any new seal will involve costs to this village about changing paper, web, stuff on our trucks, going forward. We're not undoing, but we are going to have to at least, and I think the staff will at least appreciate trying to figure out a budget of what it might cost, what it might look like. Now, if that's not doable.
Well, no,
and
we have October
okay
is
too.
kind of, October is as the time when pretty much finished options.
Good.
With everyone's feedback. It won't be the first time you see them, but I think at some point we'll have to unveil them to the public as well, so.
Sure. And if it can't be hit and they do an estimate, it's okay too, but just as a goalpost,
Well,
it would be nice.
if we know that the deadline for the seal is the end of the year, we can, as we do the budget process, we can put together a pretty good ballpark estimate of what we'd need to do in the short term, as well as a timeline on how long it would take to expunge the old seal from existing things that we may be using that we're not ready to get rid of yet, so.
What's interesting, Buchanan is also doing a new seal. They've put out a call to their local community and volunteers because their nuclear plant has closed and their seal included the atomic symbol.
Oh, interesting.
So they are now looking for. So
That
there's all
becomes
sorts
part
of
of their
reasons
history.
why. There's all sorts of reasons why people redo their seals.
Yep.
Um,
Thank you.
So, quick question, and I guess this goes to Stuart. The agreement was all settled. I know there was I know when I was part of the agreement, when I was part of this in the beginning of the year, we sent in some agreement, some language that he would have to look at it. That he signed all the paperwork that he needed to sign, Stuart.
I've gotten nothing back from Mr. Aviles.
We resent him the contract.
Okay.
I think it got kind of, but he did get it. He does have it, and I'll make sure that he signs it.
Yeah, please. That would be very helpful.
Great. Thank you. Next.
So for some time now, we've been doing all things parking here in the village, but also working very hard on trying to identify the best mobile parking app for our community based on how people park today and how they may park in the future. This is something that's taken an enormous amount of time and effort. I'd like to thank Assistant Village Manager Maddi, Zachacz, our police department, the clerk's office, and this really has a tremendous amount of due diligence has gone into looking at what will be best for us. So with that, I'd like to turn this over to Maddi, Zachacz to discuss the recommendation that we have collectively come up with and get the board's input.
Seems like a Maddie kind of a
Matt,
night.
you get a Maddi show like once in a blue. So thank you
Wow.
again. So yes, as Manager Dottori mentioned, we have done extensive research on parking mobile applications. We are one of the last communities in Westchester to have one, so I'm very excited to join all of our neighbors. The good news is we could not have made a bad choice. Most of our neighbors are very happy with the ones that they use. They don't have any, desire to jump to a different one. And we didn't really speak to anyone who had complaints about the ones that they were using. What we ended up recommending, and I provided the board with a pretty comprehensive memo, is to expand our suite of services with Passport, who used to be Complus. Passport acquired them a couple years ago. And Passport has had a mobile parking app for many years, all over the country. They're one of the biggest names, in fact, although many of the communities that use them nationwide are branded differently. So White Plains has had Passport for probably about 10 years, I might say, but it's not called Passport, it's called Park White Plains. So they have sort of a branded version. But the technology is very similar, and it's similar in any mobile app that you use, whether you use Park Mobile, some of our neighboring communities use Pay by Phone or Pango. Basically, all that you do is if you go up to a parking space that has a meter on it, it's going to have a little sticker. There might be a sign nearby that's going to tell you what zone you're in. So you're going to register your license plate so that our handheld license plate readers are able to capture that information for your parking session, and you tell it how long you want to park, and then it can draw from your credit card, from Google Pay, Apple Pay. It's basically just a contactless solution for, paying our parking meters. And quarters are still used. We're not taking the quarters away, so if everyone chooses to still use the meters the way that they were intended to be used, that nothing will change for you. Pardon me?
Your 10 minutes too.
Oh, the 10-minute button will stay. Yes, we know the 10-minute button is critically important to all those on coffee runs and whatnot.
So that means we're still going to have people running around collecting the quarters?
You're still going to have people running around collecting quarters for now, but hopefully we can get everybody sort of weaned off of the quarter, the quarter game, if you will. There are many communities throughout the nation that are mobile app only. They don't
Most
allow
communities, not many, most
Yeah.
are now. And one of the reasons is the justification we heard for doing this, respectfully, is this cost savings of the breakage, people, et cetera. So I'm happy you're doing it, but on the other hand, we got to wean people off. Most communities have switched over, including, frankly, the entire state of Florida at this point. So the idea that seniors don't use and all that, frankly, not really true.
Yeah, well, they're not mutually exclusive. If we do this for 6 months and the board decides, hey, this is going great, we want to get rid of all the parking meters, that's not an issue.
Okay.
So I look forward to answering any questions that you might have. I want to loop in the chief. His team has been very, very helpful in the deliberation process, particularly Lieutenant Damiano, Sergeant Donahue, and Parking John have been invaluable assets as we've gone through this. So
Seriously?
truly.
Parking
Yeah,
John. Okay.
John knows everything there is to know
Wow.
about parking in Ossining.
Loving
He
it.
is
Okay.
tremendously valuable.
Great.
Chief?
Is that he has nothing, I can't see what he's doing there.
Maddie, I think you just need to.
Chief, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
Oh, I'm sorry, it's a little bit hard to hear.
Sorry.
No, I mean, look, I think that there are a number of options that work well. I think that no option that exists is perfect, either for us or for any other municipality. Maddie's been extremely thoughtful with this, and I'm looking forward to making it happen, so should be a good way for us to move forward.
Good stuff. And the data, you're going to be able to collect data off of this, which was
Right.
another great selling point.
Right. So if we're doing pay by plate, we already have the functionality on our new handhelds that are going to be able to, we can walk up and down, scan the plate. Okay, you're paid, you're not paid. Similar to what we do now with our municipal parking permits and train station permits. And what, fingers crossed, very soon we'll be able to do with overnight hardship parking. So that is in the works as well. So just being able to, and this was a recommendation from Nelson Nygaard, right? Being able to integrate the LPR technology, in bits and pieces, is really going to help our entire parking ecosystem. And, the app in particular is very low cost to the municipality. It could even potentially be free. And then something that I did just want to mention is the sort of elimination of the piggybacking concept, which is why a lot of places really like to use the app. So I know if you're like me, if you drive up to a deli or something like that and you pull in and the meter has 20 minutes on it, you're like, oh, awesome, I don't have to pay. If someone's paid with the app, you won't be able to know that there's money left over, right? So that person's going to pay for a parking session anew. So everyone's still, getting what they paid for. Everybody's paying for the parking appropriately, but
Sorry, if you pay with the quarters, what does that mean?
people can still piggyback if you
that's
pay
what I'm
with
saying.
quarters. But if you're parking after me and I've paid with the Passport app, you're not going to know how much time I have left.
We're
so.
taking all the joy out of people's lives. It's okay. I'm
so-
good.
Left the 10-minute button, okay?
It's
We left the
good.
10-minute
No,
button.
that's a big deal because a lot of municipalities actually in Westchester took that away.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Mamaroneck, I'm trying to think of all the
White
places
Plains,
I've been
those-
getting
yeah,
parking
Right.
tickets. Yeah.
Well, actually, Those Ferry has something similar to what you did, because that was like about, I want to say 3.5 years ago when they were doing the replacement. They were just replacing the heads over, just put a quarters and a credit card option in now. And so I'm assuming that's what we're thinking. But we're not doing anything in the municipal parking lots.
I'm so glad you asked that. Just yet. So that is.
Give it 6 minutes so we can
Yeah,
get this
I'm trying
meeting
to. I'm
moving.
trying to. I'm trying to
Sorry,
work through this
sorry,
here.
man.
Sorry. So and we can certainly talk about this at a later date. But yes. So when we talk about the 3-hour free parking in lots 5 and 6, so on Main and Spring Street, there is potential, as recommended again by Nelson Nygaard, to turn that instead of free to app only, right? So we're not plopping down parking meters in those spaces. We're saying if you want to, park here, you can pay through the app, and then we can monitor your time that way, which is actually super helpful because, digital chalking is a little bit more complicated. So being able to do it through the app is going to make our parking enforcement's job much easier.
Thank you.
Sure.
Hey.
Sorry to speed.
No, we were kidding around, but I think he's been waiting a decade for this project. I've been hearing about it since the day, literally the first meeting I sat through was a parking conversation. So we're kidding around a little bit because we're seeing like it's actually happening now under this group. You guys are moving it forward. That's why we're giving you a little bit of a hard time, but it's really great. It's really,
Because you're moving it forward.
because you're moving it forward. No, we're just sort of laughing a little bit, but it's a great potential. And also data because people talk, there's no parking. I'm not sure it's that accurate. For some people, it feels like that because they want to park right in front of the store they're going to. But the data will say, yeah, people are right. There's no parking at 4 p.m. to 6 anywhere. But there's lots of parking. We'll be able to at least see, I think, things more realistically. So I think that'll be really great.
Yeah, there are a lot of
So we
reports we can
appreciate
get
it.
off the back office, and I did just want to say I was just corrected. Parking John's actual name is John D'Angelo, so I don't mean to.
That's
be,
why I was laughing. It wasn't about whether he knows stuff or not. I just didn't realize
Because
he had a
actually,
nickname.
that's not his birth name.
Yes,
It's not
that's, I
Park.
just want to make sure. Anyway, thank you.
Thank
No,
you.
this is great. This is great. And it's great because the stuff we bought for the police department a few years ago, the equipment totally marries into this. So all the investments are working together, which is really great. Okay, thank you all. We are moving now on to Stuart Kahan, I think.
Yes,
Right,
we
Karen?
are. So Stuart's going to be.
May I just ask, Maddie, I apologize. Does the board have to decide on the options tonight?
So if we would like to get back into that discussion tonight, we certainly can,
No, I don't know if the
unless you want to wait till the resolution and bring it up at that
I'm not
point.
sure when you need the resolution.
Right. So the other question was, do we still want to stick with the pricing structure that the board had discussed when we talked about the credit card payments, which is basically split it between the Parker and the Village? We're sticking with that?
Yeah, we had a lot of discussion. I don't go backwards. So let's move
Okay.
forward.
Okay.
But
We got
thank
it.
you for asking.
All right. So with that, Corporation Counsel, Kahan, is now going to talk about proposed local law number 8, which was discussed at the end of last year. Ability to facilitate some of our building processes, making zoning applications much easier. So with that, I would like to hand it over to Corporation Counsel.
Thank you, Karen. Good evening, folks. Our planning director is in the audience, and Joe is on Zoom. This proposed local law, which was initially presented I think first back in 2019, would create a new article in the zoning code. And because it is a zoning code change, the board would first have to approve a resolution referring this to the planning board for their recommendation. But what effectively this article does is create administrative adjustments, and it would allow the building inspector or his designee to grant, the best way to describe it is minor variances from our bulk requirements, such as setbacks and things like that. If it's within 10% of what the requirement is, the building inspector has the ability to grant that. There are certain parameters he's supposed to look at. The building inspector can, if he desires, send the matter to the zoning board for their determination. If someone is aggrieved by the building inspector's determination, they can appeal that to the zoning board of appeals and do that. There are certain exceptions that for where administrative variances cannot be granted. That would be if it would result in an increase in the number of dwelling units, if it would change a permitted use, if it would change requirements for roadways, utilities, or public infrastructure, if it has already been modified through a separate administrative adjustment or variance. In that case, it would have to go back to the zoning board of appeals, and it will not permit changes in parking requirements. That also would have to be something that would go back. Another change that is in this proposed local law, which is also significant, I believe, is that it would create a uniform structure for the length of variances to basically match the length of site plan approvals. Our variances now are 6 months, and it often happens that the variance is granted, and by the time site plan approval is granted, they have to come back for another variance. So this way, it would basically match a year from the granting of the variance. They could get up to 2 grants for a total of 2 years in terms of extensions. That's also important because currently under the code, it's a 6-month extension of the variance, and there are no limits of the number of extensions on variances that you can get. So this would basically, be a cutoff with regard to that. But as Trustee Fritchie knows, having sat on the zoning board, we would get a lot of applications where someone would be 6 inches over. And this would avoid that having to come back to the zoning board. It would basically be, Joe could look at it, if he thinks it's okay, he can grant the adjustment. And it's effectively done that way. So that's the idea behind this. What we also provided you with is the adjustment form that is currently in use in the city of Albany, which on the one side has the adjustment request, and on the back side actually has the chart for all the different adjustments. Albany's obviously a little different than here, but like here, they're effectively in the 10% adjustment area. So that's what this would be. If the board is okay with it, there would be a resolution next week to refer this to the planning board. My hope is that the planning board would then be able to consider it at their meeting on the 27th of July. And if we can get a recommendation back from them, then this can start the process of having a public hearing and then going for approval. So, as I said, we have Joe here, we have Jaime here, so if any questions, please let me know.
Anybody? Questions, comments? I mean, we've discussed this. This is not a new item, but, every day's a new day. So, questions, comments? Jaime, nice to see you in person. See you on Zoom. It's been I've seen you in person before, but it's nice to see you in the role here. Joe, always nice to see you.
Anybody?
Sir?
No? I just want to make sure that, no? Okay. Well, thanks, Stuart, and you're correct. 2019, that's the first time that I brought that over to the board, and I got a favor on and the endorsement on putting this forward. So I do appreciate that, bringing this back. There was another law part of that, but that's a different conversation. Hopefully, that could come in front of us at some point, maybe. So reading this, I do appreciate all the changes that you did from last time, because I kind of went back to some of my notes and some of the stuff that was presented on an early revision on this. the language that you have in here, besides that, the exceptions that people can ask for the variance, and I'm not sure, maybe I could be wrong, and please, Bob, because you've been here in the zoning board. Is this just strictly for residential only?
No.
Because that's my question.
The
So
answer is no.
okay. So are we, I guess, how much of this, if anything, will be used in a commercial designation area or in a multifamily portion of that? I know you put in provisions in here that they cannot ask for additional units,
I
you
can
know.
answer
of
you
this.
this way,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor. In my time doing the land use boards for 2 years, we never had a circumstance where a multifamily or a commercial variance request would come within 10%. Never
Got it.
happened.
Gotcha. And even if that was the case, let's say even if that's the case, is a purview of the building inspector or the designee to actually say, no, I want you
He
to
can
go
refer
back.
it to the
Exactly.
zoning board.
So now, thank you. So I just want to kind of, for my own purpose, clarify that. The other one is just as a silly question for me, because this does affect the zoning, because all this stuff is based on the zoning board of appeals. Should the zoning board also have just like a saying on this? Because that's what in reality is going to affect instead of the planning board, sure?
The whole purpose of this was to take it away from the zoning board.
Okay. No, I understand that. No, I
So
know that. Yes.
For them to, they have a say if someone wants to appeal it.
Okay.
But for them to.
No, for the review, but we're sending this for the planning board to review this change on the law. That's what I'm
Well,
saying.
that they have to do, but for the
Okay.
I mean, we could send it to zoning to look at the law as a matter of courtesy, but our law requires that it has to go to
Go
the
to the
planning
planning board. Okay, that's it. No, we don't have to do that.
Okay.
That's fine, because I had, anyway, so yes.
Anybody else?
I'm
Bob?
sure they'll be more than happy to have less stuff
Yeah.
on their agenda.
I
Well, the-
agree.
Yeah, I think that was the last discussion.
That's the
and-
intent.
Yeah, and the intent is less bureaucracy. It's also something that we can, it's at discretion, so if there's a question, and there's a way to appeal it. So we've covered, I think, most of the bases. I'm totally in support of this. Do we have folks in support of this so we can put it on for next week?
Yes.
Everybody's okay?
I'm always all for
Do we wanna have
streamlining.
Joe? Does Joe have any?
We
concerns?
can, but Joe is the one that asked. I always feel if you give Joe everything he wants, I don't know what else he wants to say. Joe, you're getting everything you wanted and agreed to, so would you like to add?
No, I mean, if this is actually making the process easier, then, it's better for the homeowner to not have to have them go to the zoning board for a variance that could be very, and have them spend the cost and the time and the approval. It's something that can be done administratively just to get it.
Right. Thank you. No, I appreciate that, Bob. It's just, I know that this is what he's been wanting. This is his, well, no, I know, but I mean, he had a big part in wanting, and
No,
I think getting everything he's.
No,
he's
so,
asking for.
so I guess my last question on this one is, there is a fee, part of the resolution in here, Stuart, you ask for a fee that needs to be determined by the board, correct?
That would be correct for the administrative adjustment, right?
Okay, so we need to determine that fee at some point if that's what we're gonna be doing. Now, just, I guess, for the board to keep this in mind, we are trying to help the homeowner not to go through the process with the zoning board. There is an application fee on the zoning board as well, and there's a process of about, I wanna say a month and a half between submissions of the drawings or the application to the meeting, and then the hearing, and if it has to come back or not. So, probably either Jaime or Joe, how much is the application for the zoning board right now?
I think it's 150 for an area variance right now, which seems high. I would look at this more.
You may want to come to the mic, sorry.
Oh, yeah, we keep forgetting. You're not, are you guys picking this up? I don't know.
Yeah.
Might have to come to one of these.
Well, you can sit
Right
in there. Yeah, can you sit in
All
there?
right. Yeah, I think it is. I can kind of hear my own echo.
Into Zoom. I don't know if it's.
That was where Martha was before, I think.
I believe that the cost that they charge for area variances, I think it depends on if it's a variance being requested by like a 1 or 2 family, and it is a different price if it's 3 family or commercial. And I
believe the area variance cost application may be about $300, and then you have to do all the mailings as well. So, you know, for an applicant to do, just to get a variance, it could cost them anywhere between $400 and $500 by the time they do the mailing and the fee. And then they're waiting about 6 weeks or so to get onto the agenda to get an approval.
Yeah. So I want to make sure that that's, so Stuart, please help me with this. So we're going to we're going to put this resolution for next week. And at some point, when do we have to, because this is going to take effect after a public hearing and everything else. And are we looking at revising our fees for next year, or how we should be doing? How should we do this?
There is no, the planning board will probably discuss this on the 27th. There is no August planning board meeting for them to approve.
Okay, got it.
So at the earliest, we're looking at getting back from them sometime in September. It'll probably be in a public hearing sometime in October.
Got it.
So you would be looking probably at 2022 for
Implementation?
schedule.
So this is something that could be
Well-
discussed during budget time
Yeah,
and have an
That's
added
exactly
line item, and we could have it ready for 2022.
Yes, indeed.
Okay.
exactly right.
Okay.
That's
We
the way
do
to go.
have a price for area variances, and you're comfortable with that pricing. Just because
I'm-
it's an administrative area variance, would it require a special line in the code, or could it
Well, if it's a
still-
separate fee, it would be.
That's
If it's a
correct.
separate fee, it would
That's
be.
what I'm saying. Because this is a separate fee, a separate application. It's not the same thing as that. So I want to make sure that that's
Right.
taken in consideration. That's all.
Yep. That's, what trustee Fritchie's saying is exactly right. I mean, do it in the budget process, because you could do it in the budget process, we're done. If we're all in agreement, work out details. There you go.
The only thing I would ask, I believe this may have been questioned, Stuart, I brought this up to you the other day, just making sure I understand it properly, because I know that, having trustee Fritchie as part of the zoning board in the past, one of the things that was expressed was, someone goes and gets a variance, the variance was granted, they build it, survey comes back and they're off 5-6 inches from what was granted by the zoning board. Would this apply to allow me to say, well, they're within the 10% of what was granted, or do they still have to
No,
go back?
they have to go back because it specifically says that if in fact they've already gotten a variance for that particular thing, and it turns out that their survey shows they're off, they have to go back to the zoning board. You cannot essentially, not override, but you cannot supplement an already granted variance through an administrative adjustment.
That's only in the case of a variance.
Yeah, these would
If
only.
they didn't require a variance and it got built and it was 6 inches off, he could
That's
still.
different.
Right?
That's
Thank you.
correct.
what
Just
he's
so we're all on a.
That's right.
Well, hopefully this is going to alleviate a lot in the pipeline, all the way around for everybody. So, great. We have support next week.
Thank you
We're
all.
good to go. Thank you
Henry.
all.
Thank you, Joe.
What's next?
Okay, so.
Village manager.
Yes, next, we're going to be talking about a utility vehicle that the fire department is purchasing. It's come up a little higher than originally budgeted, so we have our treasurer, Dale Brennan, as well as Chief Gallery here to discuss this item for the board.
Thank you, Village Manager Detroit. Good evening, Mayor and Village Board. I will start off and then let Fire Chief Gallery put in some of the finer details. So we had submitted a memo to establish a capital project and budget for the purchase of a 2021 Ford F-550 Van 8 light-duty rescue vehicle. This purchase was included in the village's 2021 capital plan. We had an estimated figure of $150,000, and as Chief Gallery delved into it and got actual prices, the final proposal price of $206,306 has been received from one of our purchase consortium contract Sourcewell. This vehicle will replace the current 2002 Chevy 3500 utility truck that is in service. And actually, when I look back, we actually purchased it in 2001, so it has been in service for a full 20 years. The operational needs for this apparatus have evolved over those 20 years, requiring more space for additional equipment to support the fire department's use of it as I believe, a fast truck, confined space, and tech rescue team vehicle. So this truck will allow for all supporting equipment to be contained in one space. In the project capital plan, originally we had this to be funded by a bond anticipation note, but being so late into the bond season and we go out to borrow in September, plus I had flipped to fund the paving from a bond earlier in the year because we had not closed out 2020 and I wasn't sure where our fund balance numbers would be. But now that we are into July and I do have those final numbers, I think it's very conservative to fund this from fund balance.
Okay.
Sorry, quick question, Dale. How much was the, how much did we budget this for last year?
In the capital plan, we had a submitted estimated amount of $150,000. And so the final proposal amount is 206,306.
Oh.
But that is not net of any trade-in or potential auction amount for the current vehicle.
Okay. Comments, questions? Chief, comments, questions?
Yes, good evening, everybody. Thank you, Dale. Dale pretty much spoke on it. I passed around a letter. I'll read it aloud so everybody in the audience can hear what we have. The fire department is here tonight. We're looking to purchase, obviously, a new utility truck. The one we currently have is a 2002 Chevy 3500 utility truck. It was first purchased as primary use was to be the fast truck for the Village of Ossining Fire Department. Over the years, the truck was to be used for confined space team and also our tech rescue team. With that being said, the truck could no longer handle or carry all the equipment used for these teams. We started to put equipment on other trucks, which meant we were not always prepared at a scene, especially being called to mutual aid or daytime alarms where we have been understaffed. The truck we are requesting to be purchased will be used for all three teams and will be able to hold all the equipment needed for all three teams. We are a very busy department, as you know. Our members go to a lot of schooling and be trained for these elite teams, not only to protect the Village of Ossining, but the town of Ossining, and also to be used throughout the county to help other departments that do not qualify to do these types of rescue operations. And just to add to that, the truck we have it's in good shape for what it's used, like all the fire trucks, but they get their years on them, as frontline vehicles. We're looking to get a quote or to trade it in, and hopefully the village will benefit another $10,000 from that on a trade-in, or surplus, whatever we do with the truck. And it's an essential truck that we use all the time, and it's kind of important to us. So we're asking the board if they'll support us in this and think about helping us pass this through. Thank you.
Just to be clear, it isn't about necessarily the truck. It's that we budgeted for one amount and it's coming in more. Is that right, Dale? That's why they're here. It's because it's coming way above what we originally agreed to, right? That's why we're here.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a little more than 50,000 more.
Right. Okay.
I can answer into that. When the truck was first budgeted at the 150 at the time, considering the first one we bought was 30,000, the number was a little low. And then obviously everything that's going on now, the prices, the increases, everything is costing more. We tried to cut savings. We got out of the diesel, so we didn't have to deal with the DEF, which is a big expenditure, and the motor alone is another 20,000 almost. So we got out of that. We went to a gas because we don't put the miles on it like we would if it was diesel. So we did try to cut some corners, and we're utilizing it for 3 different operations instead of 1, which we have now.
We got it. Questions, comments, anybody?
Bob?
Anybody? Yeah.
Thanks, Chief. Let me ask you this, because right now you said that the truck that you're utilizing right now is in good condition.
Yes.
And definitely, I know prices have gone up. Everything, the inflation itself is a little bit way out of control in some aspects. What I do know as well is, at least for what I have seen and for what I have heard, is some of the stuff are coming down the price, and some people are even waiting until next year to do things. Is that something that you think something like this will come down next year, and then we can wait to make this purchase for next year instead of doing it now?
In the agreement I have from E1, the numbers will increase in October. So it's gonna go up, it's not gonna go down. It'll increase.
Okay, when you said that you have an agreement, so explain that back to me. So when you looked at this last year and the pandemic, in the middle of the pandemic, because that's when we did this budget for, the numbers were 150. Did we had an agreement at that time with them with the specs
No.
and everything else?
There was never a number at 150, that's just what our capital was approved for 20 years ago. We never had a price of 150. When we first started shopping, we dealt with companies that were 225, 235. Then we went into that bid program, because then it makes it fair and everybody gets a choice to bid on it.
Yeah.
So that's why we went in that direction.
So we kept it at 150, even though we thought that it could be a little bit more?
Yes, and then we did our homework, and Dale helped a lot. We put it into that bid program, and I do have letters and stuff from dealers that state, they're gonna honor this till like October, and then the increases are gonna go into play, just like the fire trucks do.
So Manny, if I put a little perspective on this, the hollow hose truck that we just approved, Dale, correct me if I'm wrong. It was budgeted, I think, at 725, and they missed the timeline, and the dealer wanted the deal, so instead of charging him, I think 15,000 more, Dale, something like that.
Right.
He honored, but he went only halfway. So that's why they came in at 239, or 739, I'm sorry, instead of the 725. We work with these guys hand in glove, and it's not going to go down.
Yeah, all over the news this morning, actually, was about car dealerships, I just had a car accident, and I'm being told it's going to be weeks before certain parts are ordered, it'll be more expensive, blah, blah, blah. So it seems fine. I mean, we're not here because you need this truck. We're actually here because we budgeted, and it's underestimated, so we have to re-vote on it. So I'm okay with this. Anybody else have any issues that we need to hear?
The original truck is a 2002 Chevy 3500 utility truck.
Yes.
Do you know what the new model would be?
The new model is the one that we want to purchase?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, do you have it in front of you?
2021 Ford
F-550.
VM8 light-duty rescue vehicle.
Thank you.
And just another point of clarity, just the 2002 seats 2 people. This new one will seat, I believe, up to 5, which is the bare minimum that we can go to a call with.
I had the wrong model. I was Googling it, I had the wrong model. It looked, but it does, it seats more than the older ones. That is what it says. So that's all good. Anybody have issues,
Yeah, Team Bob
comments?
has a problem, but I'm okay,
No.
Chief.
Okay, so Dale, I heard we have the money. I hear that they need it. I hear that they don't want to miss their timeline. I hear that the board is supportive. Do you need anything else from us?
Nope, I will send the resolution on to the next step for the legislative meeting.
Okay, much appreciated.
final vote on it. Thank you.
Great, thank you, folks.
Thank you, Dale. Thank you,
Sure.
board.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Anybody, village manager, I think it's the last piece of the evening, yes?
We
For
are
this
complete
session.
with the agenda, yes.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I think that we are done for this evening with the work session, and we need a motion to adjourn
For matters
for
of personnel, please.
So moved.
Second?
comments? Nope. Somebody's supposed to say vote, and we're voting.
In favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So adjourned.
Have a good night, everyone.